Good morning. My name is Pastor Eric Blatchford, and a happy Labor Day weekend to each of you. Before we dive into the sermon today, I wonder if you know what led to the establishment of Labor Day. In the late 1800s, the average American worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in order to scratch out just a basic living. Children as young as 5 or 6, which is my daughter's age, worked in mills, factories, and mines. And the work wasn't necessarily safe. It was very dangerous to work. People weren't given sufficient breaks or access to restrooms and clean air. The result of all of this unsafe work was protests, many of which turned violent as Americans demanded safer working conditions, better pay, and an 8-hour workday. Following massive unrest in an attempt to validate that American workers had been heard, President Grover Cleveland made Labor Day a legal holiday in 1894. That's what we're technically celebrating this weekend, the end of violent protests over work, and the recognition that while our work has value, everyone deserves and needs rest and the ability to enjoy the life that we have. 127 years later, nothing's changed. It's still true. It's still true that work is a great thing and that we need to work because work provides us a sense of purpose. That's true whether our work is paid professional work or unpaid work, like raising children or committing oneself to a cause or volunteering in some capacity. Being unable to work or have something that we devote our attention and energy to is proven to increase anxiety and depression because we weren't created to be idle all the time. And yet, as important as work can be, as enjoyable as work can be, it's also still true that we need rest. We need a day that's different than all of the others, a day to smile and to laugh and enjoy all the other good gifts that God has given us. And so the question this morning is, are we doing that? And how do we do that? How do we establish a healthy, God-honoring rhythm of work and rest? Well, the creation story we heard today helps. When God worked to create the world, he built into the created order a rhythm of work and rest. I want to invite you to listen for that rhythm as I go back quickly through the story, starting with verse 3 in Genesis 1, where it says, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and there was evening and there was morning the first day. Verses 6 and 7 then talk about God creating the sky and the water, declaring them good as well. And once they were finished in verse 8, it says, and there was evening and there was morning, the second day. Then God created the land with all kinds of vegetation, declared it good. And in verse 13, when it was finished, there was evening and there was morning, the third day. Then God created day and night, the sun and the moon. And in verse 19, once it was finished and God had declared that it too was good, there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. Then God created the fish and the birds, and in verse 23, once he declared those good, can you guess what he said? There was evening, there was morning, the fifth day. The sixth day, after creating animals and human beings and declaring them good, it finished by saying what? And there was evening, there was morning, the sixth day. There's a rhythm all the way throughout the creation story. And there was evening, and there was morning. The third day, the fourth day, the fifth day. This is a Hebrew poem. And when you read that phrase that kept on repeating, it's like a song or a rap refrain that keeps driving home a message that we're meant to hear. Which, of course, the message we're meant to hear is that the seventh day was different from all the rest. And that's highlighted in the fact that not only does God rest, but there's no mention of evening or morning on the seventh day. Instead, the pattern was broken, and it simply said, God rested on the seventh day. Why? Was God exhausted from the physical labor? Was God creatively empty after imagining all the details of the universe? Why would the God of the universe rest? There's really only one good answer to that question. God rested for us, to set us an example and give us a pattern to follow. Because God knows what we need. God made us, and the truth is that our bodies, unlike God, are in need of rest. We need a rhythm to live into that appropriately helps us to work and do what we need to do, but also to take a break from that work. Because when we don't rest, it's impossible for us to be at our best. And when we're not at our best, that doesn't only affect us, it affects our relationship with other people as well as God. Let me explain what I mean. We need rest because rest resets us. It helps to calm us down. It refreshes our bodies, our minds, our spirits so that we don't crash and burn. I love the Native American proverb that says, "You will break the bow if you always keep it bent." Rest ensures we don't break. And it actually helps us to work better in the long run. Amazingly, studies have shown that people who work a 40-hour work week get the same amount of actual work done as those who work 50 to 60 hours a week. Why? Because it comes back to the rhythm we were created with. Work is important, but we weren't made to work all the time. So breaks, days off, vacation, and time away is healthy. Some people don't think they need to do those things, but we do. You'll benefit from it, but so will other people. Because people in general are crankier when they don't get rest. We see this very clearly in children, but it's true of us as adults too. Our family and friends all gain from the fact that we are well rested. Studies, once again, have shown that people are generally more enjoyable to be around if they're well rested. And when we aren't appropriately resting, we squeeze out our energy and desire to be with other people, but so too do we squeeze out God. The Lord always gets crowded out when we don't rest. I don't know about you, but have you ever thought, I'm too busy to pray? I can't worship this weekend because I'm so tired, I just got to sleep in. Or have you ever thought, I'd love to have some quiet time with God every day, but I just can't seem to find that time? If you've ever felt any of those things, you're not alone. But we feel that way most often because we aren't properly resting throughout the week so that we have the space and time in our lives for other people and for God. When I and other pastors preach sermons about generosity or stewardship, it's common to hear us say things like, hey, don't give God the leftovers. The Bible says God deserves our first fruits. And of course, that's true. But God also deserves the first fruits, not just of our money, but of our time. And so when we don't feel like we have time for God, it's because we haven't made God a priority to give God that time. And by the time that we've given all of our energy to everything else that's required of us in our lives, there isn't much left over for God. But God's created us in such a way that we need to rest. We need to rest for ourselves, we need to rest for others, and we need to rest in our relationship with God. And so from the very beginning of Scripture, when God rested on the seventh day, it wasn't because God needed rest. God specifically changed the rhythm of our week so that we would realize how important it is to slow down and remember we're more than our work, that we need other people and we need the Lord. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth, God rested on the seventh day to give us an example to follow. How are you doing with that? Because, folks, we need to rest. God says limit your work to 6 days a week, and there's a word for not doing that. Do you know what that word is? Sin. That's the word. Sin doesn't always mean doing bad things. Sin literally means to miss the mark or to miss the target. And sometimes we miss the target by doing something bad, but we can also miss the target by trying to do something good too. Not resting is sin because we're missing the target God established for us. And by not doing it, we're harming ourselves. We're stealing time from other important people in our lives and our relationship with God. When we don't rest, we can't enjoy the good of all that God has made in this world that we're meant to enjoy. That's why resting or not resting is a sin. So maybe if you don't rest well, you might be thinking, how do I establish a rhythm of rest so that I can be at my best for myself and others and God and am free to enjoy God's good world and all that I've been blessed with? Let me share with you some insights from the way God's people used to structure their days centuries ago, even from before the time of Christ. Because the way people used to organize their time in life based upon Scripture, I think, is incredibly helpful to establishing a healthy framework and rhythm for daily, weekly, and ongoing rest. I'm calling this an ancient biblical day planner, okay? Would you like to hear about it? Well, to begin, let's look one more time at that rhythm we found in the creation story. So pop quiz, what was the rhythm again? There was evening and morning, the fill-in-the-blank day. Do you notice anything backwards about that rhythm? It almost sounds like Yoda from Star Wars wrote the creation story, doesn't it? Evening and morning there was, right? That's not how we describe our days. We'd say there's morning and evening the 5th day of September, but not in the biblical ancient day planner. The way God's people used to organize their day planners in time looked more like this. The first part of the day was blocked out roughly from 6 p.m. or sundown until about 10 p.m. That was the beginning of the day, which means that the beginning of the day was committed to relationship. From sundown until you went to sleep at night, you spent your time with your family and friends, your extended family, eating and drinking and laughing, enjoying each other's company. And then from roughly 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or sunrise, you slept and you rested, so that from roughly 6 a.m. or sunrise to 6 p.m., you could commit yourself to work and productivity. So you notice how different that is than the way that we organize our days. The ancient biblical day planner said a new day begins at sundown, not sunrise. This, of course, is why the Sabbath observation in Judaism is an all-day Saturday beginning at sunrise. The Sabbath actually begins at sundown on Friday night and lasts until sundown on Saturday night. The other Jewish religious festivals and feasts in the Bible were all celebrated the same way. The reason for this is because of the pattern of the creation story. It was evening and it was morning, the first day, the second day, etc. Kind of cool, right? Well, why does this matter? What does that change about how we view or organize our time to lead us to better rest? What it suggests is that work and productivity, while important, are actually secondary in importance to relationship with family and friends and God. And the reason for this is because work and productivity come after relationship and rest in the biblical day. Work arises out of our relationship and rest, which, going back to the discussion of first fruits from earlier in the sermon, means that work and productivity technically are the things that receive the leftovers at the end of the day, while relationship receives the first fruits. Are you following? Because this idea is a completely foreign concept to our culture. Work comes first in our culture, but in the ancient biblical day planner, it was the opposite. Family and relationships were the priority. They received the focus at the beginning of the day in the evening. They were to be given our best attention and energy, which really makes a lot of sense when we stop to think about it. I mean, we were created in the image of a relational God whose primary purpose for us was to be in right relationship with God and other people. Yes, God gave us work to do, and work is incredibly important, but in the end, being in right relationship with God is just as, maybe even more important. It's why when I've talked with those who are facing the end of their life, the most common regret they have is that they wish they would have spent more time with people that mattered to them. Their work was important, but in the end, they realized it wasn't the most important thing. What mattered most, and the questions that people have often asked themselves in the face of death, is, have I loved? Have I helped others? How are my relationships with those closest to me, and where do I stand in relationship to God? Folks are proud of their work, but in the end, most people realize that it's the relationships we have that count the most. So viewing our days as beginning with relationship instead of beginning with our work helps to shift our minds to see relationship as a priority. So what do you think of that? What if you shifted your mental paradigm to consider your day beginning when you get home, and that your family or friends are to get the first fruits of you and your energy and your focus at the beginning of the day in the evening rather than the leftovers? How might that change your approach to your days? Part of learning to rest well is learning to prioritize what matters. And the reason the ancient biblical day planner was arranged the way that it was to remind us that our relationships matter and that every day we need to be as invested in our relationships as we are our work, putting those key relationships first, certainly with our families and friends, but also with God. Because another part of the ancient biblical day planner was a daily rhythm of resting and relating to God. A pattern of pausing to pray 3 to 5 times a day was the norm. They would pray upon waking at dawn, again at dusk, and then at meals. Thanking God, like at dinner time prayer, for food and for provision, pausing to lift up anxieties and worries and to remember, as we talked about last week, that the Lord, our shepherd, is with us in the midst of them. Seeking wisdom and guidance and strength throughout the day, 3 to 5 times at a minimum, you would stop and you'd take a break from your work and your worries and refocus on God and rest in God's grace. You set up 3 to 5 little mini Sabbaths each day to remind you that no matter how stressful and busy things might be, we need God. And God is with us. God is for us. And God is calling us to do our best work, but also to remember that we are more than our work, that we are God's beloved children. At dawn, at dusk, and whenever you sat down to eat a meal. That was a daily rhythm. And if you're one who feels like, you're too busy to do this, guess what? You're not. Because it can be done in as few as 30 seconds or as long as you want, just a couple times a day. If you establish this daily rhythm, you'll find you do have time for this, and that doing it will bring rest and refreshment to your soul during the day. So try it. At dawn when you wake up, at dusk before you go to sleep, and when you eat meals, pause, rest, talk to God. Doesn't have to be for hours, but just for a few moments. Thank God. Ask God for help. Repent and seek for forgiveness for the things that have gone wrong in the day. Remember that God is with you. Ask God to use you to bless other people or who it is that God's calling you to bless. For a minute or 2, 5 times a day, do that and see if it doesn't change the way you live your life. That was the daily rhythm. Then, of course, there's the weekly rhythm where every 7th day would be an entire day of rest that looked different than all the others, spending time with God in worship, and then again, spending time with friends and family. In addition to the daily and weekly rhythms, there were also the yearly rhythms of holy days, of feasts like Purim and Passover, or in our world like Christmas, Easter, or Thanksgiving. That was the ancient biblical day planner. What do you think of it? Do you think you could establish a rhythm of spending even just a few moments with God at dawn, at dusk, and at each meal? Taking a break one day a week to remember your life as a gift from God and you are more than your work, and to enjoy God and to enjoy other people and the world that God has made for us. How might that change your attitude or spirit as you go about your day? Pausing to rest and rejoice in God's presence, power, providence, and purpose in your life. Maybe if we were a bit more intentional in establishing these rhythms, we'd feel like we're thriving more often than just surviving. Friends, I want to encourage you to try this out. Just try it out. What's it going to hurt to try? And maybe just say to God this morning as a prayer, God, I'm going to try on this rhythm of rest. And I'm going to rest and worship one day a week for my good and your glory, to honor you by enjoying the life you've given me. I'm going to pause throughout my day, each day, to spend moments with you at dawn, at dusk, and at meals at a minimum. I'm going to give you and my family the first fruits of my energy and focus and time so that I'll be even more productive in the work that you've called and given me and equipped me to do. Whether that's professional and paid or volunteer or related to raising up and caring for my family and friends. May this indeed be our commitment. May it indeed be our prayer this Labor Day weekend. To work well, yes, but to rest well and enjoy all that God has given us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.